Hi everyone. I'm in Guadalajara, Mexico right now. I'm on an exploratory trip down here with my husband. We're looking for a place where we want to live. We're planning to move, and we haven't quite picked the town where we want to go. So we started here in Guadalajara and heading out to San Miguel Allende tomorrow, and then on to other places. So we have a couple of these trips to make, but this is the inland trip, and we'll do a beach city trip too. So anyway, that's what I'm doing, but I wanted to make sure that I still that I got to get something up for you while I was gone. A question that you hear all the time, which is, why did this happen to me? What was the reason for this? What was the purpose of it? And this narcissistic abuse. And I think that we in I don't know, the American culture especially seem to sort of feel like we are entitled to having an easy life, entitled to having things work out for us. We're not expecting to have bad things happen. And so when they do, it really catches us off guard. It's like, but, like, why did this happen to me? What was the reason for all this? And instead of realizing that's life, things happen in life and we lose people. That's just how it goes. But certainly, I know a lot about loss. Most people that's my YouTube channel, know that I lost a son a couple of years ago, not even 2 years ago, uh, and that before that, I lost basically everyone else. and I had a husband that was diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, comorbid with narcissistic personality disorder, and the marriage lasted 10 years, but I finally my health gave out. My body said no. My body said no more. It was a loveless situation where I was being emotionally abused by. I'd been emotionally abused all my life, and so it just finally body body gave out and said no. And I had a heart attack at 33 years old, and that was the beginning of the end of my life as I knew it. My marriage and most of my relationships never recovered after that. So it was a mass exodus, one person after another, because of the smear campaign and all that stuff, and bunches of rumors and lies and things that people to this day still don't know the truth about what happened. About there was these lies about what the reason was for this heart attack and all this sort of stuff. And so it was just how it goes. Those people who have been narcissistically abused, the beauty of that is that I don't have to explain to you why it happened the way that it did, because you understand how that goes. As unbelievable as it is to anyone who hasn't ever been in a relationship with a narcissistically abusive person, or a person who has a narcissistic personality disorder, which is a disorder that is lacking of empathy and has a predictable set of qualities that it entails and predictable series of steps that it takes, and our stories are all very much alike. And one of those things that happens towards the end is that there's this discarding phase, and part of that is a smear campaign where they will have to smear you and smear your name and ruin your reputation and try and sabotage your life and your relationships, because these people are very entitled, and they want to, if to them there's always a winner and a loser. And so if they're breaking up with you, they're determined to win, which means you have to lose, which means there's never an amicable divorce, there's never an amicable breakup with one of these people. But there is no recovery from this major loss, and certainly no recovery from losing a child. If I'm going to sit around and ask myself, why did this happen to me? Well, it happened to me because I'm a human. It happened to me because it was in the cards for it to happen to me. Everyone has their own beliefs. I tend to believe that there are soul contracts that we have. That there was probably a plan that I had, that I wanted to learn certain lessons in this life, and so these things happened so that I could learn those lessons. But the thing of it is that's really, really important to remember is that the meaning of it isn't in the thing that happened. The meaning is yours to create, is yours to find. And so, a lot of people have really done that. A lot of the people that I talk to a lot of people that have channels, other channels. That's the reason that they're doing it, is because they're taking this thing that hurt them, and they decided to make a blog about it. They decided to go make a YouTube channel about it, or they decided to write a book about it, or they decided to help uh, women in a abuse shelter, or whatever it is. There's a million different ways that people create meaning of it. And I was going to do another episode. I didn't have enough research done yet, but I'm going to do an upcoming episode on something called post-traumatic growth. And but this is basically a part of what I'm talking about. Post-traumatic growth is when you take some, really terrible situation, and you end up doing things that you never would have done otherwise. You never would have done if this bad thing hadn't happened. And you find inner reserves, you find a certain strength in yourself that you didn't even know you had. And those are some of the beautiful things that come from a tragic event like that happening. So the important thing really to remember is that, every day is a new beginning. You're not defined by that thing that happened. For sure, you need to grieve. Anger can be a huge motivator, can be a real big motivator. And it's so much more powerful than sadness. Sadness is just awful, and we're stuck in sadness for a while too. We're really stuck there, and I know when, for me, anger came, it was such a relief, and it was motivating. And that's when I was able to start doing some stuff to fix my life. But for a while there, I was really stuck in sadness when I had lost my family, my my husband, and most of my friends, my business, all of my assets. I mean, I was really at my lowest point. I was really, really, I had lost everything that I identified with, everything that told me who I was, and everything that mattered to me, everything that I valued. I had lost, except for my two children. And so that's what got me through. And then 15 years later, I lost one of my children. That easily could have just buried me. That could have just ruined the rest of my life. And I was, partly motivated because I still have a son that needed to see that I believe we can live through this. I believe we can be okay. That I believe that there's some reason it happened. I do believe there's some reason it happened. And also, if you can flip things around and make it so that can look at things a different way. Instead of losing my son at 20, I can say, at least I got to have him for 20 years. That's huge. But I'm right now, one of the big things that I am really working on is what I can do with what what having him and going through that experience taught me, and what I learned from it. And I learned a lot about a lot of things that I would never have known. I learned what's I learned what is going wrong in the family court system. I learned what's going wrong in the way therapists are being trained, and the fact that no one knows anything about narcissistic abuse. The fact that no one knows anything about narcissistic abuse except for the abuse victims is really shocking. And that has to change because it is an epidemic, and it is really probably the most detrimental thing to children. And it affects lives, and it's just devastating what it does. But it's silent. It's a silent, quiet epidemic that people don't even recognize is happening. And the only ones that see it are the ones that are hurt by it, and not until well after they've been hurt, not until they're picking up the pieces of their lives trying to figure out what in the hell happened to my life. And we're the only ones that know. That's not okay, because the information is there. It should be taught to psychologists. Psychologists should be identifying it. And family courts, when they come in and they have such a big reaction to drug addiction and all that. And the way that we treat drug addiction is another really thing that I found through that whole experience with my son. That's another, and not only through my son, but also through my experience with my ex-husband and being involved with a narcissist and all that stuff. That whole experience also got me to do some things I never would have done, which were bad things. I mean, I made some mistakes, got myself arrested, but I got to learn. I mean, I never would have expected that I would know anything about what it was like to be arrested or to go to jail or any of that stuff. But now I do know. Now I know how that's all like, and I know how it works. I can see areas for change. And so, that's the meaning that I can create in it is that I can take these things that I know now that I didn't know before. And you can't, once you see, you can't unsee, So I can't very well know the things I know, see all the things that went wrong, and and know that if someone had told me, if I had known what to look for, the fact that these steps are repeatable, the fact that they repeat, and we all have the same story to tell, basically the same story to tell, just makes it that much more shameful that no one else warned us. The fact that there was information there for us to see before our lives were destroyed. And psychologists, the ones that do have the PhD or the MD or the PsyD degree behind their names, are not really doing much to help us. In my whole thing that I went through, I had how many child psychologists, lawyers, judges, people with doctorate degrees, and not one of them came in and said, we got to protect these kids from this sociopath. Not one of them did, but one therapist did, one, just one. And it wasn't enough to get, I wasn't able to win anybody over in court with that. They almost got mad at me for bringing it up, it seemed like. Whereas, my husband could come in with allegations about my having a drug problem with no proof at all, and it did, worked beautifully for him. So, these are the ways that you create meaning. And so, there's a lot of forgiveness and things you have to go through. You have to I had to forgive my son for dying. I had to forgive myself for not protecting him. I had to forgive, you know, all those people that created this situation that was unbearable for my children to live in, and change who they were as people. You know, my hope was that they were going to come through it and be these really interesting guys. And unfortunately, and that was happening. They really are. They really were really interesting guys. But the fortunate thing was that my son has still not done any trauma treatment, and he was self-medicating with a drug that could kill him, and it did kill him. So, he just didn't, he ran out of time. But if I couldn't do something, if I couldn't create some meaning in that, if I couldn't create meaning in it, I wouldn't be able to get out of bed. My life would have been over. And so this is what I want to, sort of pass along to all of you tonight, is that if this experience of having this happen, and however long it's been happening, if it took you, decades to figure out that you've been abused all your life by everyone you know and love, well, that's the situation I was in, and that's a terrible, incredibly devastating situation. And you're going to want to beat yourself up. I get people telling me all the time about how they beat themselves up for why they didn't do something sooner. I stayed way too long, but it was all I knew. It was all I knew. And it was so terrifying. If any one of your needs is being met in this abusive situation, and if you leave the situation, you don't know what needs are going to get met. You're jumping into an abyss, an abyss of nothingness. So it's a really scary thing to do. You did what you did when you were ready to do it, and everything happened in just the right time, because that's the way it happened. So you have to forgive yourself for that. But the reason you got mixed up with someone like this is because you were a good person. You didn't see it happening. You didn't see it coming. You didn't see, you don't operate that way, and so it was unfathomable to you that anybody did. I know for me, for one thing, that was really, really one of the big things for me was that I had parents that never told me they loved me. But I told myself that they did love me because they were my parents, so therefore they had to love me. So when I meet this guy who's just love bombing me, you know, all kinds of love, I never occurred to me, here my whole life I've been telling myself that people love me that don't tell me so. It never occurred to me that someone would tell me they love me that didn't. Why would they do that? It was, I was thinking, I don't have any money. There's nothing for him to get other than me. So the only thing I have is myself. but I didn't understand. I didn't understand narcissistic abuse then. I didn't understand that there was something, that was a huge asset, that there was something of value there that was worth him, trying to, lure me in with. And he also saw that I was vulnerable. And, one of the ways that we are vulnerable, and this is one of the things that is really important about why to find meaning and why to really take the time to work on yourself, is because every time that these situations happened, there was something else I was running from. So, when I met my ex-husband, I had just dealt with a rejection from another boyfriend, and I just left a job, and I left a city, and I moved back home, and I got rejection from my parents. Then I met this guy, and then I had one more abusive relationship after my ex-husband, and it would happen during the divorce. So I was very traumatized, and one of my lawyers came in and totally love bombed me. And that time I was thinking, here's all these people that have known me for all these years, and they're acting like I'm not lovable. And and then there's this guy here, and he was actually my lawyer in this criminal case, and he had all my records and he knew all my secrets. He knew everything about me, and he was telling me that I was the perfect woman for him. And so I was thinking he must love me, because why would he get involved with me? I'm a mess. I'm going through a divorce. I'm a wreck, and he's a successful lawyer. Why would he bother getting involved with me, unless he was true what he really said? But again, I didn't understand narcissistic abuse, and our relationship lasted a while, and then he was. By the time he had me, moving in, he was discarding me and involved with his secretary. It was like, so that's just the nature of how it goes, and you live and you learn, and you go on to create meaning in it. But the meaning is not just there. It's not gonna come out and jump up and bite you and tell you here's what it means. You have to find the meaning. You have to create the meaning. And that a lot of times isn't taking action with it. You're doing something with it that gives it meaning. And sometimes when the very worst thing that you can imagine has happened, you can be pretty brave, because it doesn't feel like you have a lot to lose. If you've lost just about everything, it's almost a good place to be. That's the truth. Because when your back is up against the wall and you've lost just about everything, it's kind of amazing the things you can do. And at the end of the day, you might end up really surprising yourself. And maybe you will, most likely, my guess is that you're going to be a much more interesting person, a much more compassionate person, uh, than you would have been had you had this really super easy life. You know, we don't grow with ease. We don't grow when things are easy and it's all lollipops and rainbows. That's not what causes growth in us. And one of the things that I am proudest of is the fact that with all the things that have happened, I just continue to become more and more compassionate. And I know that if I had not had the tragedies that I've had, I would not be the open-minded, compassionate, and loving person that I am. I would have probably been much more judgmental, because I wouldn't have known that, but for the grace of God. You know what I mean? And that's the truth. You were a good person. You got targeted by someone who was not such a good person, who saw you as someone who could be used and manipulated. And the reason you could be was because you just didn't think people would be like that. You just couldn't imagine anyone being like that. They walk around paranoid because they think everyone's like that, because that's how they are. Because as we know, we don't see people as they are. We see them as we are. So you saw them, and you put your motivations onto them and assumed they were doing the things for the same reasons that you were doing them, and it made perfect sense. It made perfect sense. The thing that what I want to throw in there along with with that is, it's not. This was another another episode I was going to do. I was going to do an episode about, don't beat yourself up too much about picking the person. What the problem was is that you didn't fire them sooner. You know what I mean? That the fact that you stayed so long. So we're going to make mistakes in picking people because it takes a while to get to know someone. But what made us different from other people is that we stayed. We stayed when we were getting abused. These other people, they dated other people. They dated people that don't have long abuse histories with them because the other people picked up what was wrong with them a lot quicker. Or they picked up that they couldn't abuse that person, so they didn't even bother getting involved, you know? So it wasn't so much that they picked you or you picked them. That's going to happen and that's going to keep happening because, you're awesome and people want to, of course they want to be with you, you know? But but what is hopefully changing is that you have boundaries now, or you're putting in boundaries, and you just wouldn't take the abuse again, and you wouldn't let it go on anymore because life is precious and there is no reason that you should spend any of your days miserable and being abused and crying and confused and wondering where people are and wondering why this is happening and jumping through hoops trying to fix things when you're the only one invested in doing so. And that's what we were doing. And that's the thing that's where the mistake was. It wasn't in getting involved with them in the first place. The problem was that we stayed too long when we were getting abused. And there were a lot of reasons we did that. And primarily the reasons we did that is because we came from abusive families and we didn't know. And then we felt we didn't have anywhere to go. We believed them. We believed that we weren't all that great or whatever. A lot of that we believed. So that was the problem. It was earlier abuse. They were really not, and this is maybe where some compassion also can come for them, is that, they did a bad thing. For sure they did. But what they did is they came into your life so that you could see all the things that were there well before you met them. All the things going on with you that needed to be healed well before you met them. They came from your childhood. And, people like to, my parents were big on like, oh, no, you just want to go to therapy so that you can blame your parents for this and that. And, well, you know what? I used to say, oh, no, it's not true, but and it isn't true. That actually is not true. Patients don't do that. People go to therapy and they will jump through all kinds of hoops. They will come to every kind of explanation they can come to before finally having to decide or come to terms with the fact that their parents didn't really treat them that well, that they weren't loved. That's the last thing we want to think. We are much sooner going to think that we did something wrong, that there was some reason for it, that, because we don't want our parents to fail. We don't want them to fail. But eventually we come to realizing that they did fail to love us. And that's where these problems began. And that's a devastating day. And we try to avoid that, because a big reason a big reason we stay is because it's not a little realization. It's not a little thing. Once you let it come in and you start to acknowledge the truth, you start embracing reality, it's going to change your entire life. And that's what we're scared of. And that's, embracing reality for me meant losing everyone, but really essentially I'd lost everyone anyway. I was invited to pretend I didn't. I was invited to pretend things were fine, but they weren't fine, and I couldn't unsee that once I saw it. So that's really just my message today here from Guadalajara. Thank you all so much for being here with me. And you've got really, it's really kind of hit me how much this channel has been what's gotten me through a really tough time. And so I appreciate all of you so much for showing up and being there and supporting my channel and supporting me. And I'm growing slowly but surely. And I'm always open to suggestions, comments, anything that you can think of that you would like to see me do, or ways you'd like to evolve the channel. I really am offering this as a service to you all out there, and really want to provide something that is unique and that is inspirational, and that is what you need. So that's it for today. All right, you guys, thanks a lot. Take care. Bye-bye.